Welcome to Windows on the World. Very, very full and action-packed show tonight. We've got Piers Corbyn coming on and Sandy Adams. Of course, these two are part of the bigger picture, the talks that we take around the country, and we're coming very soon to a town near you. If you'd like to book one of the talks, go to windowsontheworld.net, check out the homepage and the video there, The Bigger Picture, which is all about the things that we talk about in depth every week and more. So we also offer solutions to what's going on, because between the three of us, we do know a bit. Mr. Corbyn is in the building. Sandy is waiting to join the conversation. And tonight we're going to talk about Brexit and how can Brexit be aligned with terrorism. This is very interesting, isn't it? Because we hear about the rise of the far right. This was, of course, announced by Mark Rowley, head of MI5, just before he disappeared. And now we're getting it from everywhere. It's actually become part of the narrative. And we're going to go into tonight many different areas around this agenda. Mr. Corbyn has just arrived and he's looking for a chair. There's one right behind you there, sir. And I'm doing a talk in London this week, actually. It's a kind of precursor to the other talks we're doing, but because it's just an evening talk, I'm just going to be there on my own promoting the bigger picture. And I think Sandy Adams is coming up as well, so the two of us will actually be in attendance and we'll try and get as much information in as possible. And it's actually advertised as the bigger picture, the Global Local Agenda Explained, and it's on Thursday, this Thursday the 8th of November 2018. And it's at 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and it's at St Gabriel's Hall, Glasgow Terrace, Churchill Gardens, Pimlico, London, Southwest 1V3AA. All of the information is actually on the website, windowsontheworld.net. Now tonight we're going to reveal how Brexit will not be allowed to happen. That sounds very negative. However, there's a positive side to it. If we reveal the plans and the people who are behind stopping it, then something might be able to be done. I think Mr. Piers has a problem with his pacemaker, or maybe it's his phone, I'm not sure.
I have no pacemaker.
You've not come in here bugged, have you, Mr. Corbyn?
Well, it's very likely I'm bugged. I might have something sewn into my brain, transmitting my presence. But
I think you've been listening to too many conspiracy theories.
Yes.
Or have you been to an Electric Universe meeting?
I have. That could explain it. But of course, yes. Well, flying to accusations of conspiracy theories is the last refuge of every scoundrel.
It is the refuge of the destitute. The refuge of the destitute. So,
mentally destitute.
Tonight we are going to reveal how Brexit will not be allowed to happen in the public arena, because there are things going on behind the scenes which we're going to reveal. Now, this is to do with the 650 member Queen's Privy Council, who created a thing called the European Council on Foreign Relations in 2007. And has a raft of subversives working away at making sure the global action plan is implemented, including, of course, at the helm, and who's been there a long time, David Miliband, who's actually been out of the public eye but working towards this agenda in this organisation, the European Council on Foreign Relations, which, as I said, was established in 2007. Now, also on the radar is the Centre for European Reform, and its bill matter states the Centre for European Reform is a think tank devoted to making the European Union work better and strengthening its role in the world. But, and yes, we're going to divert away just for a short period of time, because that's going to be the main thrust of what the show's about. We're going to divert away into some of what the headline of this show is all about. We're going to divert away from the important matters first, so let's talk about terrorism. The terror threat is at Bikini Black, and it's invented far-right who are to blame. The invented far-right, which was invented by MI5 about a year ago, and has now been pushed into every stupid politician's brain. And of course, this is to demonise anyone who wanted to leave the European Union, anybody who may agree with one or two of Trump's policies, and of course anybody that doesn't agree that anthropological global warming, taxation for all, and global control of all assets is not a good idea. That means you're extreme far right. And we did talk about a bit of that last week. We had a very good show on that. And that was called The Fourth World. And it was all about how these plans came into operation in 1992. Obviously, they've been in operation behind the scenes a bit longer than that. But this present agenda of climate change really got going then. So have a look at that show, because we are now facing climate extremists. Yes, so they don't get called terrorists, you see. It's interesting, this, isn't it? So people who are willing to subvert democracy and stop roads and hold hands and basically frighten people in the street, basically making barricades everywhere and causing what they call civil unrest or direct action, are not actually classed as extremists, because they are working for the New World Order. You know, they're working for the globalists, and that's what we're going to be talking about along with the terror threat, you see. So here we go. This is an interesting one. The International Institute for Strategic Studies is interfering with those who wish to express radical opinions on Facebook, right? The ISD is a global operation which ties into the whole business of terror. Now, they are recruiting experts, get this, they're recruiting experts on trivia, right, as we're going to explain, to counter radicalisation on Facebook. Now, the dialogue that appears to be going on here will be whatever the security services tell them it should be, as we've outlined. Currently, what they have to call the extremists are the far right, which are now being sort of put on the same bracket as radical Islamic extremists. So basically, anyone who voted Leave supports Trump or does not believe in global warming. And of course, anybody who doesn't like the idea of ideological subversion through the extreme militant left. Now, we don't do left and right on this show, but what we do is we talk about where the two of them actually lead to. And that's what we're really getting onto here. But this recent reports, the recent reports state, and this has been on all the major news stations, including RT, which I think I got some of this off. It said MI5 and counter-terrorism police are currently running more than 500 live operations involving roughly 3,000 subjects of interest.
Really?
Yes, at the Contest relaunch. Now, this is Contest, which was basically the predecessor to what was called Prevent, which basically is about the council being able to identify who's susceptible to extremism, and that may be people who can actually see through what they're doing. See, as the paradigm is shifted.
Susceptible to the extremism as they describe it, because anything they don't agree with, they say it's far right or terrorist, and you know.
Exactly. I'll carry on with this, Mr. Corbyn. I'm sure you're going to come in with some very incisive comments in a minute. Now, it says here, at the Contest relaunch, which is of course the predecessor to the council spy operation, Prevent, Sajid Javid said that there had been a step change in the threat from terrorism. Well, he'd know, wouldn't he? I mean, he's obviously up against radical extremists every day of his life, isn't he? You know. He also drew a comparison between Islamic extremists and far-right terrorists. Oh, I wonder who popped that into his minuscule but highly active brain, you know. Home Secretary Jarvis has announced the new measures as part of efforts to revamp the security services contest strategy, which will utilise a multi-agency approach in order to tackle terrorist threats that are becoming increasingly diverse and hopefully vibrant. Right? So the Prevent strategy, we did cover that on previous shows. Basically, it's a spy operation rolled out by the council. If you get caught by one of their council spies and you are deemed susceptible to terrorism or subversion or radicalisation, then you have to sit in front of them and the police and explain yourselves, and they can actually deal with you, make you go on courses and get you to dig holes in the road or whatever they want. Basically, that's what the Prevent strategy is. It's a good job that these people don't have their own minds, though, because we're going to get into something rather amusing now. Facebook Messenger is being used to fight extremism. This is a video you can see on YouTube, and it's been put out by the BBC. But it's been actually implemented by the International Institute for Strategic Studies. Now, their promo pack or bill matter states, the International Institute for Strategic Studies is a world-leading authority on global security, political risk and military conflict. In other words, it's absolutely tied into the intelligence community. It says here the IISS has been advancing global peace and security since 1958. Well, that's great, isn't it? Nothing to worry about there, then. Carefully researched facts and incisive analysis are at the heart of all we do, helping governments, academics, journalists and businesses. I wonder what businesses they help. We are an international institute that owes allegiance to no government. So, in other words, they are international agents of change or subversion.
Well, who funds them?
Well, they're funded by many people, and we'll get into that in a minute. I think we're talking about the major banks, major corporations, and special interest groups here. Yeah. Our experts work from 4 offices in London, Washington, DC, Bahrain, and Singapore. They carry out fact-based research, convene and frame discussions, and produce publications including The Military Balance, the Definitive Annual Assessment of Defence Capabilities and Survival, the Global Politics and the Strategy Journal. Now, these all sound a little bit military to me.
Yeah, they do.
It's quite interesting, isn't it, that they're part of the military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
And, just as a side issue, I don't know whether you knew this, Piers, but Halliburton or their subsidiaries, Kellogg Brown and Root, run the management infrastructure of the Met Police. Did you know that?
God.
Oh, yeah, since about 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah.
Well, but they put in huge costs for that.
Oh, yeah. Well, none of this is cheap, you know. We've got a substantial terror threat here to deal with. As the organiser, it says here, of some of the world's most prestigious security summits, as well as numerous conferences, workshops and discussion meetings, the IISS enjoys unrivalled convening power. In other words, they're absolutely tied in to huge corporations and lobbying groups.
Yeah.
So it says our events are unmissable fixtures in the calendars of government ministers, members of the business community, policy analysts and media alike, and provide a unique opportunity to find new avenues for defence and security cooperation. See, it's all about this, isn't it? All about the military-industrial complex.
It's challenging governments into one step. Into the same direction.
Exactly, and that's why I brought all that stuff up to start the show. In other words, the way it's being steered is into stopping Brexit. Does anybody remember Brendan Cox and his campaign about the death of his wife, Jo Cox, which was used to smear people who voted for Brexit? Do you remember that? How we were going to be deemed to be far-right extremists because we voted to leave the EU? Well, we're going to get into how he's connected into the European Council on Foreign Relations. He's had to go into the background now because obviously this is an interesting thing as well, that these change agents that are put into place, they're very rarely popular with the public. Have you noticed this?
Yes.
Chuka Ramona, he's one of them. Yeah. He's part of the European Council on Foreign Relations.
David Miliband.
Oh yes. Well, he's in the background now, you see.
He is,
Mr.
yeah.
Miliband.
But he wasn't that popular when he was knocking around.
Yes. It doesn't seem like 2 minutes since there was officers with machine guns protecting his lovely house in Primrose Hill. I wonder if they're still there. So, okay, now let's get to the what we were talking about, the latest counter-terror operation, which is this thing on Facebook. And basically what they've done is they've got these 2 alleged victims of extremism who are direct messaging people on Facebook. Now, they're known as intervention providers. And what they're doing is they're providing support and advice for people who they deem to be subversive. Okay? Now let's have a look who these people are. The main character behind this, who you can see in that video, His claim to extremism fame was to be a witness, an alleged witness, at the shootings in Tunisia on the beach.
Right.
Now, for some reason, this makes him a victim. Now, I don't see why that makes him a victim, because, yes, an observer, certainly. A victim, no. The victims were the people who were shot, you know. So he saw this. Obviously, it's quite traumatic seeing people being shot. But how does that qualify him to go and direct message people on Facebook and tell them all about their problems and try and calm them down?
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So yeah, how exactly does that make him a victim? Very good point. He observed an incident which was reported in a certain way. He does not, to me, look in any way credible on the video. And at 4 minutes 30, it states that they are countering propaganda and removing extremist content, or getting it removed, right? So that you've now got this third-party agency that stepped in on their own behalf without telling anybody, and nobody knows who they are, and they're now reporting people to Facebook and demanding that these people have their content removed. Sounds very fair, doesn't it, really?
Well, it's a 1984 type of rule by the hidden bureaucracy.
I should say so.
Big Brother.
And it says here, there is no violence online. Wait a minute, this is the point about violence, yeah? Because he said, this is what he said, the terror victim, this is this bloke who witnessed this shooting,
right,
says, there's all of this violence online. Well, wait a minute, I've been online loads of times and I've never had any violence from my computer. So I don't really understand where the violence is coming from. I mean, I've had people say nasty things to me, but I've never actually had the computer attack me, you know.
Well, perhaps that is to come.
Well, I've had my computer attacked. Well, that's different. It wasn't me, you see. But, yes, there's no violence online, is there? So
Perhaps
what are they
Google
talking about?
could make a special adaptation of your computer so it could attack people, could shoot people.
Yeah. Well, I think that's...
Or give them stun guns, and raise at them.
Yeah, well, it'd be easier for them, I suppose, than actually having to sit there personal messaging people about their content on Facebook, wouldn't it? So as we know, there's no violence online. So basically, nobody knows whether it's genuine or provocateur material or just another intel job. So how many would-be terrorists put out ideologies on Facebook? I mean, this is the ridiculous thing about it, as though you're going to plan an attack on social media. You know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's obviously not for the reasons they're telling us what it is. You know, that's the point, isn't it? But this made me really sick, right? It says in the video, I was a little bit entitled to do this after what I went through and what I'm going through. Now, wait a minute. There's people who've come back, from war zones and been in horrendous shootouts in the military, who've got post-traumatic stress disorder. Wouldn't they be much more qualified to deal with this? And then at least it would be on behalf of a government rather than a shadow government like this lot. Just throw that one into the mix, you know.
Yeah.
And he says, he adds that to it. He goes, I'm certainly not qualified. So he's not qualified to do it. He's got no reason to do it apart from that he witnessed a shooting. So anybody who witnesses a shooting out there, I would recommend them to start giving people advice on Facebook. You know, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And the other troll, they've got a male and a female internet troll here, says, I had quite radical views when I was in my teens. Now, wait a minute. Is there anybody out there who doesn't have radical views in their teens? Because I don't know of anybody, you know.
Yeah, they all have radical views in their teens. Yeah.
Exactly. So here we've got like MI5 targeting Brexiteers, and it's been full-time since the Joe Cox smear was used against those who voted Leave. See our show, Joe Cox, Murder and Propaganda, still getting a lot of views, that one.
Yeah.
But let's just read through the MI5 narrative before I bring you in, Mr. Corbyn. The UK's top domestic intelligence agency, MI5, is to take the lead in the fight against right-wing extremism amid fears white supremacists are gaining a foothold on Britain's streets to incite violent racial conflict. Now, I can't step out of the house without seeing blokes with shaved heads and loads of tattoos basically doing Nazi salutes. I don't know about you.
And they're driving white vans as well.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, this is the thing. You see, it's the flight of the white van. You don't see as many white vans as you used to, but that obviously is something to do with MI5, isn't it? You know. It says here, right, that the Guardian reports that the Counterintelligence and Security Agency will take over from the police in the monitoring and combating of far-right terrorism. It means white supremacist ideology will sit within the same portfolio as Islamist terrorism and Northern Ireland-related terrorism, both covered by MI5. Now, what we're seeing here is MI5 are now the direct interface to surveil and disrupt the public. And this was all stated to us by think tanks like Demos, who are absolutely involved in all this stuff, saying that the new democracy will work with a mixture of open infiltration and direct action being taken. Now, this word direct action, we hear this from these fake controlled opposition groups all the time. They talk about direct action. What about this new thing, this Extinction rebellion thing? You know, that they've just, I just put some postings on that, which hopefully we can get into later, because I got some great responses from some of the drones who follow it. But these are basically terrorist organisations, and they're saying, we'll go and get arrested, we'll do this, we'll do whatever it takes. Now, the thing is that all of this fake far right and all this fake Tommy Robinson nonsense is attracting people, but it's a total distraction from what's going on. It's an absolute distraction, and of course MI5 are now going to be part of that distraction. They're going to be putting more and more people into the role of being a far right-wing extremist, and it's going to get cartoon-like everything that they do. Because basically they're going to bring in people, agent provocateurs, who are going to look even more stupid. so yeah, whenever you see someone go, Tommy, it could be our friends from the civil service, you know.
Yeah, they could, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of all this so far, Piers?
Well, they could be film extras, couldn't they?
Yes.
I do agree that the idea of any meaningful far right in Britain or in America is actually nonsense. I mean, there are some people who do have weird ideas, I've no doubt, but the whole thing is being deliberately expanded upon and exaggerated and even created by the powers that be for the reasons, as you said, as a distraction from other issues and as an excuse to label anybody they don't agree with. So people who are clear Brexiters can be labelled with the far right. And, if you say anything these days, you might be told, oh, so you agree with Donald Trump then, do you? If Donald Trump agrees with you or not, so what? I mean, these associations with bad things are all they've got to rely on, rather than use the arguments about why we need to have Brexit in order to defend our sovereignty and stop the dismantling of British industry, which is part and parcel of the European Emission Trading Scheme, which emanates from the European Union. Yeah. And is done in the name of saving the planet.
Absolutely, and it says here 4 far-right plots have been prevented since March 2017, compared with 13 Islamist plots in that time. There are around 100 live investigations into right-wing extremism. Now, this was some time ago. This was in June, I think. It was talked about last year. So I think there's going to be a lot more, because when they start announcing this stuff, I mean, the Joe Cox thing was really the start of it, and that was absolute subversion. So you've got this Brendan Cox who put out this appeal within 24 hours of his wife dying, basically, saying, give us all your money. Yeah. And then he's fronting this thing. Well, he's not fronting it.
Sorting out the funeral.
Well, yeah, More in Common it's called, the thing that he runs. And that, again, is full of change agents and people from Google, the military-industrial complex, etc. And he's nowhere to be seen on it now, because he's obviously disgraced himself. And that's an interesting thing, but he's still on the European Council for Foreign Relations, you see. So you've got these, they are subversives, these people. Now, it says here the police will take the executive lead, taking over from MI5 when the time arises to disrupt the plot and make arrests. One senior police source told The Guardian that the move made sense, saying MI5 are driving the car an SO-15, the counter-terror command, are in the passenger seat. When there is a need to take a plot out, SO-15 get in the driving seat. I mean, who puts this crap into their heads? You know what I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Sounds so American, doesn't it? Americans
Well, it's just
always popping up with jazzy explanations for things they're doing.
Yeah. Threat level is at Bikini Black, and reptilian craft have been spotted on the dark side of the moon. However, there is a threat of the far right on the streets of Westminster as we speak. Yeah. So there you go. Top secret administration jobs really believe all this. They're told it, and of course they repeat it. Now, let's get on to real subversion. The European Council on Foreign Relations. So listen to this. This is some stuff I picked up, some of my own and some from a website called melkelly60.wixsite.com. That's Mel with one L. melkelly60.wixsite.com, who's gone into this in quite some detail. So this is a mixture of the stuff that's on the site and my own research. So thanks to that site, Brexit was never about leaving the EU, as the Queen's UK Privy Council set up an unelected EU called the European Council on Foreign Relations in 2007, funded by George Soros, the Rockefellers and DFID. The Queen's UK Privy Council of 650 and rising is the invitation-only political party that really runs the UK together, with all members in there who basically swear an oath of secrecy. Now, with the Westminster Cabinet taking their orders from this body and getting MPs from every party to implement UK Privy Council policy for them in Parliament, basically this is a very, very powerful lobbying group, to say the least. And, of course, this European Council for Foreign Relations came out of this Privy Council. Now, what no one says openly, says here, is that the Queen's UK Privy Council set up this new unelected EU in 2007. So a good example of how they mislead us together is David Miliband. It says here, for years, fellow UK Privy Councillors and David Miliband have continually made public statements claiming David Miliband has retired from politics completely and is going away doing charity work, with Miliband himself claiming he is a retired politician. So is this true? It says here the entire time, actually, David Miliband has been working for the Queen's UK Privy Council and the European Council on Foreign Relations. Basically, it's Rockefellers, the Trilateral Commission, with ex-Tory MPs and elites from around the world, including people from the Ditchley Foundation, Tories, Lib Dem and New Labour, and the most powerful people in the UK and Americans and Canadians. And the whole thing about this organisation is it's Chatham House rules, which means there was an element of secrecy there. So they can repeat what was said, but not who said it.
Basically,
Yeah. So David Miliband became a member of the Queen's UK Privy Council for life in 2005. This is starting to make sense now as to why he's been taken out of the picture, isn't it? And it says here, by 2002, the advisory board listed in the CER annual report 2002. Right now, this is the Centre for European Reform, right? And this is a spin-off from it, which has connections to Bilderberg. It's funded, basically, it says here, by money. It says laundered from banks and corporations. Well, it's not really laundered from them. It's given to them because they all have listed sponsors. Their top corporate donors include BP, Boeing, The Economist, NM Rothschild, Goldman Sachs, Microsoft, Lloyds, Morgan Stanley, HSBC, and many
supernationals who want to rip us apart and super exploit the British and other workers in the European Union.
Yes. So let's see what it says about the Centre for European Reform. It says it's a think tank devoted to making the European Union work better and strengthening its role in the world. So can you see how this is coming together? That Brexit may not be allowed to happen because we have a shadow government stopping it happening. And that shadow government are our government, you know. So we regard European integration, it says here, as largely beneficial. But as a side issue, it says, but we recognise that in many respects the union does not work well. Well, they want to give it more police state powers, don't they? They want to make it bigger. They want to make it global. We also think the EU should take on more responsibilities globally. Here we go.
Right.
I preempted myself there, didn't I?
Little army.
Well, let's get on to what they want to do, because you're going to love this one. On issues ranging from climate change to security. Okay. The CER aims to promote an open, outward-looking and effective European Union. Through our meetings, seminars and conferences, we bring together people from the world of politics and business, as well as other opinion formers, useful idiots. Most of our events are by invitation only and off the record to ensure a high level of debate. In 2016, the ECFR, the European Council on Foreign Relations, received funding from George Soros' Open Society Foundation and Rockefeller Brothers Foundation, with DFID donating money in 2014. And here's a list of the countries and the EU and non-EU countries actually involved in the new unelected EU, European Council on Foreign Relations. Albania, Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Macedonia, Malta, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Serbia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey and the United Kingdom.
Turkey.
Interesting. So no surprises, George Soros is representing Hungary with his son Alexander, while currently the UK is represented by members of the Queen's UK Privy Council, as we've said, including Miliband and Tory MP Damien Green, as well as Tory MP and advisor to Princes William and Harry Rory Stewart, whom the UK Privy Council put in charge of areas of Iraq after the illegal invasion, it says here. Oh, New Labour MP, our favourite, Chuka Umunna, and Emma Reynolds also represent the UK. Well, that's good of them, isn't it? How can they represent the UK when they're traitors to the UK? Because they're working for the Global Action Plan, you see. That's how it is. So it says, now look at the list of crooked elites from every EU country in the European Council on Foreign Relations, who represent each country in the new elected EU, set up by 50 people from across the EU, including, of course, the Privy Council. Now, there's over 270 unelected people involved in here running the show. Yeah. And, of course, it's all underpinned by Soros. So, now to Rothschild banking and climate change. So, besides founding LCF Rothschild, which is the previous employer of Macron, Edmund Rothschild, who we talked about last week, who's very involved in all this, was also the main man behind the Bilderberg Group, and he served on its steering committee for a number of years. So basically this takes us into the climate change thing, and we can finish off with some more information on that. I've got a lot more to put in about these people who are involved in these organisations, but I think we should have a bit of a break now and bring in Piers with some other news from this week.
Okay.
Yes, carry on.
I thought you meant after the break. You mean before the break.
I'm going to have a break.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. Well, yesterday I went to the demonstration at City Hall to demand that the mayor and others with influence make the ballots, which have been agreed that should be allowed to over development plans, to make them more enforceable and extend their scope. I.e., right now you see, following announcements by the Labour Party and then the Mayor of London agreeing to insist on ballots for any council which is getting funding for social housing. So those ballots have to happen if there's any redevelopments involving social housing funded by the mayor. So this is quite a big turnout from many groups around London who are facing horrific tricks by the councils working hand in glove with developers to wheedle people out. And the common point was made by everybody that the right to a ballot shouldn't just be depending on whether or not the mayor funds some developments there. we have, it seems like, for example, Wandsworth Council at the Alton Estate is trying to avoid asking the mayor for any money so that hopefully they could avoid a ballot. So that's one little trick going on. But the other thing is that obviously the original Labour policy, but Labour isn't in government as yet, was clearly that anyone affected should be given the right to ballot. And it should not be that the developers can just essentially tell the councils what to do, or rather do deals with the councils without getting the people's consent. So a lot of people there, and there's going to be an ongoing vigil. The demonstration was largely initiated by Cressingham Gardens in Lambeth, who are being threatened with demolition, even though there's no financial case for it, no social case for it. The only case is profits for developers. So they're organising an ongoing vigil, but not just of them, but any others who are going to carry on having a vigil at County Hall and at City Hall until the mayor agrees to meet them and helps or actually extends the right to ballot. I mean, the government could institute a right to ballot straight away, as could a future Labour government, and make it a proper right to ballot. It doesn't need to be, and it shouldn't be dependent on funding by one organisation such as the GLA.
That's very interesting, Piers, because I've been picking up some information today which implicates Khan with several corporations and land grabs.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. I think he's probably the most unpopular mayor ever when you look at the postings on the dreaded social media, you know, the one that we're not meant to go on because it's going to make us vulnerable to extremism.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I couldn't measure his popularity, but you know, if he wants to get popularity, he should insist on ballots for everything, not just make it dependent on his funding, right? Because, you know, the mayor has a lot of power, and he can also put demands on government so that this could apply nationally. I think a lot of stuff came up at this demonstration and things which need to be said. The point about the councils constantly misleading people by changing vocabulary was brought up a few times. I mean, for example, when they talk about involvement of more people, it normally means manipulation. When they talk about empowerment, it means weakening of people, because they so-called empower them by shoving them into little committees or focus groups that they control. And when it talks about consultation, we know very well what's going to follow is imposition.
That's right, yes.
They just ask you, oh, what do you think? Oh, well, you think that? Well, too bad. We're going to do this. Or they make a false assessment of stuff. So the key thing is people want a ballot as a right on every development.
Well, that's a great thing to push, because that's the only thing that can stop it or even change it or actually get public opinion to be heard, because public opinion's not heard. That's the whole point of all of this rush to get this infrastructure in place, is that public opinion's got nothing to do with it.
That's right. Well, the councils are doing their best to, as I say, dodge the ballot bullet. And they have to be called to account. See, I was a councillor in 86 to 90 in Southwark. Now then, and I don't think I'm imagining things, that we, just about all of us as Labour councillors, were dedicated to defending the public and the people against various attacks and tricks by developers. But now the councils, I would say just about all of them in London, maybe one or two exceptions, like Haringey's now an exception, and probably Camden and Islington largely exceptions, but the others work hand in glove with developers in order to take away people's rights, destroy council housing, demolish council housing, drive people out of London, and basically change the whole of London. They are social cleansing operations, and this has to stop. And, you know, I think now that the ruling classes are in a very deep crisis. They've got Brexit going on, and they're completely scared of people, and they know if they had another Brexit referendum, people would vote Brexit even more strongly. I'm sure, because they can see how the British industry has been dismantled. So they've got Brexit going on, and they want to desperately defend the profits being raked in by developers through social cleansing operations. And, well, they're going to have to move fast because people are waking up. I mean, the number of people on this demonstration there's lots of these little groups all around London, all fighting very similar stories. The council's operating in very similar ways. You know, they go into an estate, find something wrong, then declare it needs money to do, and then declare developers needed to be brought in, and then they bring in a developer, and then they start saying we've got to demolish. Now, generally speaking, it's not a real narrative at all. What's happened is they've decided years ahead that they want to smash up some estate and make loads of money for somebody, and then they come in with a story to justify it.
Well, it's kind of interesting because this is all part of the big picture, isn't it? That's why we call our talks the bigger picture, because all of this is interconnected, and I think that's why we like to bring everything together. And people listening may think, what's all this got to do with terrorism and subversion and all this stuff on Facebook? Well, it's all part of the same thing, and it all works to the same template, basically. It all works on a divide and rule system, and it works on the public being put in absolute ignorance to what's going on. And it's the old Hegelian dialectic, isn't it? So that's the thing. At every level, we see these sort of subversive groups coming in. At this point, I'd like to bring Sandy in because I think she's got things to say about this. And we were talking just before the show about the influence of these lobbying groups. Are you there, Sandy?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Good.
Sandy Adams here from Glastonbury.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Mark and Piers. How are you? You all right?
Yeah, very well.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I've been looking really at the whole of the ECFR and the CFR. You know, the Council for Foreign Relations. And, you know, it's interesting that Soros is behind all of it, really. George Soros, and he seems to be funding an awful lot of these organisations that propaganda organisations to push the narrative through.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry, I can hear myself. Is that?
No, it's fine. Let's carry on.
Is it okay? Is it okay? Okay, good.
Is it an echo or something?
No,
it's not. Because he's got this other company called well, you mentioned it actually, Open Society Foundations, and they kind of they're a civil society. They fund civil society groups around the world, basically change agents. And he sort of set this up a long time ago. You know, I think the EFO. When was that set up? The European side. I know the Council for Foreign Relations has been set up since 1919, but the European one was quite recent.
2007. The European Council on Foreign Relations. Came out of the UK Privy Council, the Queen's Privy Council.
Yeah, Queen's. Yeah, and they're the ones who I'm pretty sure won't let Brexit happen. I mean, it's pretty much set in stone that we'll get some kind of weak, pathetic excuse for Brexit, unless people really do stand up and shout. Even then, I think it would be difficult, don't you?
Well, I think pretty impossible. But the point is that I think the most important thing is that the public need to know that their choice is being removed. And I think that's becoming blatantly obvious by the amount of time it's been dragging on for, and the lame excuses and the nonsense that is printed in the press every day. It's like, you know, if somebody falls over in the street, it's going to affect Brexit. It's absolutely ridiculous now. They're just tagging on anything. And this is a sign of this lobbying power, is that they always tag on issues that are separate and nothing to do with the main issue. And this is just an absolute technique that's used all the time.
Yeah,
I think
I mean,
Brexit
they're very
doesn't
adept
happen,
at using the media to create massive psycho-political operations that are there to manipulate the public opinion, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they are, but is public opinion actually being manipulated by them? Because when I talk to people, I don't find anyone saying, "Oh my God, let's stay in the European Union." I mean,
oh, hurrah!
You know, and I
really
think all
good.
these stories. I think a lot of it. Well, I'm assuming that there will be something called Brexit, and it will be a Y2K moment, i.e., the horrific things like the sky falling in or no one being able to cross the Irish border or something just won't happen at all. Now, are we going to get there, though? I don't know. I mean, what the Tory government are saying now is they're putting forward a Brexit in name only thing, basically. They say, no, we leave the European Union and then we adopt all their institutions and rules. Well, this is absurd. I mean, that is actually, it's a deal which is worse than no deal, if that is possible. But that's what it is. Will we actually get to this type of total betrayal? I don't know, because you see, people are going to get so angry. I mean, the destruction of the fishing industry, which follows from the type of so-called solution they're putting forward, is a terrible thing.
Yeah,
and the
audience,
the ongoing destruction of British industry everywhere, as I said before, under the banner of the European Union emissions trading scheme, which is just a trick to deindustrialise Britain or anywhere they want to deindustrialise. It'll get worse, and people in the north of England know that the only thing they've gained. Well, they've gained nothing from the European Union. What they've experienced is the end of industry. You know,
and poverty, deep poverty. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and deep poverty.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, as I said before, is sold. A lot of false ideologies are around in order to justify anything they want to do. I mean, in the name of climate change, you have the word sustainable. So the word sustainable is used to justify anything in any development. I mean, Elephant and Castle, they've destroyed 1,000 homes for 1,000 council people or more and chucked them out of London. And then they're talking about building new communities and so forth. Well, they've destroyed a community, and as it is, we've got a building site. And the community, I don't know if millionaires who are sitting on properties and watching them rise in value, if they can be described as a community at all. I mean, are they people who meet each
Piers,
other?
listen now. Look. People are going to have a mini Tesco, a gym. They're going to be able to cycle to work. They're only going to use their cars occasionally or not at all. This is going to save the planet, and you're complaining about it. What is wrong with you?
I am.
Well, I'm going to tell you what's wrong with it, because I'm going to talk now about Extinction Rebellion, which is the new bastion for complete lunatics, right? And it's got these cardboard cutout idiots who look a bit like those ones who climbed on the back of a fracking lorry, who've never done a moment's activism in their lives. It looks like them, right? So it's got these sort of idiots talking nonsense about the end of the world, yeah? So I thought I'd throw something into the pot. So I put, this is great actually, there's some great reactions here which give us an insight into the mind of the useful idiot. And what I put on here, The state organised useful idiots begging for enslavement and taxation. This is fake activism at its most ridiculous. But idiots repeat lies and are dangerous. These people know nothing about climate, just propaganda.
Well, they
and
might be paid to say this stuff, of course.
Hang on a minute, please. I'm just trying to get to the end of this. Right, it's a very, I'm trying to get as irate as they are, Piers. Please stop it. This is the end of the world. Right. This is fake activism and it is most ridiculous, but idiots repeat lies and are dangerous. These people know nothing about climate, just propaganda and IPCC nonsense. They are incapable of debate. Clever idea that the billionaires who fund this have just made this great idea and make a religion out of taxation and totalitarianism, right? Mm-hmm. So basically, I've got things like, our planet is dying, what the F is wrong with you, right? Then there's another one, he's psychologically enslaved by the corporate vested interests and billionaires who are the main culprits in the catastrophe that's unfolding. They're so ingrained themselves in our politics, our societies, our communities, and our psyches that so many are in denial at what's happening and the destruction we've caused that they willingly march headlong into oblivion, then accept reality and embrace essential change. The C word, right? So that using the C word to me is like a red rag to a bull,
Well, indeed.
Yeah, hang on a minute. So I've come in with, yes, definitely. Every one of them in this video is brainwashed into meaningless sound bites. Their children will be ashamed and angry at their gullibility. This is one of the most embarrassing videos put together by the state and corporate interests who are the only ones to benefit from the programme. Perfect Hegelian manipulation. And he's put, I was referring to you! A quick squiz at some of your own videos tells me all I need to know. Climate change denial is obviously the most foolish and dangerous of your batshittery. Do you have shares in Alcofoil as well as the fossil fuel conglomerates that you are an apologist for? I said, perfect answer. You can now enrol in the Vivian Westwood School of Critical Thinking. And it went a little bit quiet after that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
Oh, that's brilliant. Absolutely
very
brilliant.
good. But these climate change freaks, they always end up by saying us, i.e. the people who are climate realists, are tools of the oil industry. Now, this is completely opposite to the truth. The oil industry love the climate change story. Their websites make it very clear that they support action to solve the climate change problem caused by the CO2, so long as there is a uniform price for carbon across the board. And all the oil companies say this in those very similar terms. It means that because prices of energy have to go up in order to make it possible for farmers to sell food as fuel, to burn it, then it means they can increase their profits on oil because the oil prices go up. And it's a complete no-brainer. You just do the sums and you look at it. Basically, the oil industry was going to lose about 2% of the world market to renewables and double their profits on 98% of the world market. So it's a complete no-brainer. You go along with the story. If you're an intelligent investor and sitting on the board of an oil company, you go with man-made climate change and nothing else. And you're very happy to be presented by Friends of the Earth as somehow against man-made climate change but that's also part of the...
Yeah, this is the big thing but the thing is that they don't have an argument. All they do is these stupid ad hominems, then they accuse you of being part of the enemy. In other words, well, you're making money out of destroying the planet. It's so absolutely mentally deficient, the whole thing. Yeah. That's why it annoys me so much. Because
are these people actually real people, or are they police agents anyway?
No,
because a lot of them, see, the climate camp was run by police agents.
Well, we exposed all that in our videos. Have a look at the...
So, you just don't know. Some of these people writing in could well be just police agents trying to make...
Well, yeah, this is just on YouTube, but it is actually pretty... That's a pretty good actual...
okay.
Overall view of what they do. I think there are those people, yes, and what they do is they have basically they use ad hominems and these logical fallacies, and then they accuse you of what they're doing. It's all projection and reversal and all that nonsense. But I think that some of these people are real. But this one's called Leader of the Starry Sky. But everyone, have a look at that video. It's called Intro to Extinction Rebellion. But basically, my point at the beginning of the show, is these lot are infiltrated by these government agents, and they're run by the government. Basically, they're just lobbying groups for they're actually lobbying groups, what you're talking about, the oil industry, actually, when it comes down to it, but they're too thick to realise it. And the thing is that they have a corporate template to them. But what they're doing is they're getting these idiots to say, we need direct action. How many people want to get arrested with us, So you're going to get all of these agent provocateurs there, and they're going to start causing a lot of trouble, these lot, if they get a hold. I don't think they will. These groups often don't, but... It's just, again, it's like Soros by numbers, It's absolutely ridiculous, this stuff.
Yeah, he must be funding that one as well, I would imagine. It's got that look about it.
Have you seen it? They all have that corporate
conspiracy theories, Mr.
No, I'm just looking at corporate governance, Mr. Corbyn. A thing that you seem to be rather against, actually. I don't know why. I mean, you've been in politics a long time. You seem to have a problem with corporate governance and infrastructure. I don't know why this is.
I'm a scientist running a long range.
Well, some people would say you're antagonist, Mr. Corbyn, and actually you maybe you have shares in Alcofoil for your tin hat.
Look here, I'm a progressive nutter. I've been to Glastonbury. I must be okay.
You're progressive. Oh, that's all right then. We do need progressive people, of course. But yes, that's been quite an interesting show tonight. And in conclusion, I was just talking about this More in Common. Do look that up as well, because the staff there, which is this thing that Brendan Cox set up, they're connected to everything that is absolutely standout controlled opposition, basically. Military, Google, New Cities Foundation, all of the stuff that ties into the Agenda 21. And that's what I wanted to bring up most of all, is that all of these organisations link into the same thing, the global governance corporate structure. All of it does. There's hardly anything outside it, and if it's outside it, you won't hear of it, which is why not that many people know about us, but the people who do know about us are having an effect. So I think that's probably about it for tonight's show. And remember, if you're in town this Thursday, the 8th, I'm at, let me just see, go back there, it's the Thursday 8th of November, and Sandy's going to be there too. Piers might pop in for a cup of tea, and we'll all be there obviously to sign autographs and and say hello. But it's at St Gabriel's Hall, Glasgow Terrace, Churchill Gardens, Pimlico. It's on front page of winnersontheworld.net. We're out in Manchester on the 17th. Check winnersontheworld.net for that. On the 18th, we're in Lytham St Anne's, and on the 18th, also Lytham St Anne's. Check the website for that. And in conclusion, Sandy, is there anything you'd like to say about what we were talking about in tonight's show? Give you the last word.
I think you've kind of covered most of it. I
Okay.
mean, I've just been, just looking at, the CFR really is kind of the thing that's behind all this. It's I was just looking at all the people that are members of the CFR, and it goes right across the board. It's media moguls, it's corporate people, it's heads of state, and then you get weird people like George Clooney and Angelina Jolie on it. And these people are there, and they're sort of really trying to. The CFR is they control public. They're trying to control public opinion, and they really push the people to kind of battle against each other as well. It's just about really create tensions between different groups of people, which we're seeing now all the time. And I just think people are beginning to wake up. If people really know that there's a dark agenda behind it all, they'll understand why there's so much tension around and why groups of people are all arguing. And it's happened, this week in Glastonbury, there's been a huge thing about the Gender Recognition Act, because all the feminists are all getting. We ought to maybe do a show about this at some point.
Oh, definitely, yes.
It's really, really interesting how it's actually pitching the feminists against the LGBT community, not the feminists, but women who actually have a problem with the LGBT community, because that's become another entity in itself. It's really interesting, and who's moving all this behind the scenes?
Well, it's social engineering. I mean, that's why I find it so interesting.
Yeah.
Because the actual way it's played out is the interesting thing to me, and being able to see through it is part of the education. Yeah. Mr. Corbyn wanted to finish up with something.
Just tell me. I think I'd like to repeat the point that the powers that be are trying to maintain their position through their three-pronged false narrative. They want to promote the European Union and say how wonderful it is, and they're desperate to save the European Union. Second thing is they've got man-made climate change, which they're trying to want everyone to believe in, and they use that to justify the European Union and vice versa. And of course the third thing is hating of Trump. They like promote hating of Trump everywhere. Now, we can have criticisms of Trump, fine. I mean, as I do, but he's right about climate change. So every time you say something intelligent about climate change, you're denounced as a Trump supporter. And I want to mention two things coming up, which you've done before. The 14th of November, there's going to be in number 1 Victoria Street, the Royal Meteorological Society and Imperial College, Grantham Institute, are going to have a sort of meeting to report on the so-called 1.5 degrees C dangerous alarm report coming from the IPCC. Now, the meeting itself seems to be fully booked right now, but there could be something going on outside. But nevertheless, I suggest people should try and book there. You go on there and on the website, Royal Met Soc, and see if you can do it. And the second thing to mention is on the 20th of December in the Royal Institution, we're going to have, that is we being the Committee for the Formation of a Accountable Science Academy, are going to have a meeting in the Royal Institution on the 20th of December in the afternoon, where we're going to see if the IPCC and Al Gore and the BBC have come back with a response to our 6-point challenge, which is that they have to produce evidence that there's actual CO2 changes in the real world lead to actual changes in temperature. Now, we know there is no such evidence, so we're challenging them to come forward and give us a scientific paper which shows that. Now, we know they can't, so we'll probably have 3 empty chairs at that meeting, and we'll do a number of things, including a physical demonstration as to why their theories are false physics.
Well, Piers, I hope there'll be some representatives there from the Vivian Westwood School of Critical Thinking. And
actually, it is great, because actually I do feel they're running a bit scared at the moment. I noticed there was a YouTube thing from George Soros and it's how to save the EU, and he's there sort of at the at one of those
Didn't get that. You just cut off there, Sandy. Oh, it looks like we've lost Sandy, I think. That's never mind, though. It's nearly the end of the show. So, that's it from Windows on the World for this week. We'll catch you again next Sunday, 9 p.m. on windowsontheworld.net.